We welcome you in, everybody, to another installment of Fielding the 68, brought to you by our friends at Rhythm. I'm Faxon Childress alongside Brad Wachtel and Rocco Miller. It's everybody's favorite time of the year, right? It's the best month of the year. We are on the fringe of the madness. Some may argue that we've actually already entered the madness here in the midst of conference tournament season with a ton of crazy upsets, and we've got a lot to unpack over the course of the program today. We're going to get into it in the first segment with a little bit of a different program here today. And we're going to go through all of our top 16 seeds and reveal our top 16 seeds. So we're going to rip the Band-Aid off and start with the 1 seeds and do some in-depth team breakdowns here today over the course of the program. So let's look at our 1 seeds. It'll be the Auburn Tigers, who are currently slated to play in the South Region, the Duke Blue Devils, who are currently slated to play in the East Region, and the Houston Cougars in the Midwest Region alongside the Florida Gators in the West Region. Rocco, we can start with you here, and I'll let you and Brad duke it out for what 2 you want and what 2 Brad wants. But talk to me a little bit about 2 of these 1 seeds and your analysis on their resumes and just the team in totality at this juncture trending towards March.
Yeah, so I'll take the last 2, actually. So I'll do the Florida-Houston comparison. First of all, I agree with the 4 that we picked. I think all of us are unanimous at this point. And I think maybe I'm the only one that has Florida 3rd overall and Houston 4th overall. Now, the difference is whoever you have higher will get Indianapolis in the Midwest region. So that is more preferred for both teams. So there is a little bit of a reward there. But I would just say Florida's resume and Houston's resume both have a lot to like, clearly. Otherwise, they wouldn't be 1 seeds. But with Florida's 2 wins at Alabama, at Auburn, best pair of road wins anybody has in the country. Those are platinum gold level elite wins, Faxon. So you go into like the quad 1A. Florida has 1 more than Houston. It's very close. Houston has more quad 1 wins overall. And then I guess one of the other differences is Houston has a quad 2 loss and Florida does not. So that hurts them a little bit on that comparison. And then Houston, of course, has the perfect 10-0 road record. Very good, powerful metrics. They both have very good, powerful metrics. So I don't think that separates either team. But I prefer Florida's resume just a little bit more. And I think the committee will be pretty divided on which is which. I did a mock committee last weekend, and we were all pretty divided. So I think if it comes down to it, and I know the committee will never admit this, but I think if it comes down to it, just basic logistics, it's a little easier to put Houston in the West and have Florida go to the Midwest and have Florida go all the way west. So we'll see how it shakes out. I mean, I'm not going to be surprised either way, but I do think Florida, based on those heavy wins, which is supposed to like carry the day with your resume, should get the nod.
Yeah, and it's hard to argue against having some of the best wins in the country. I mean, going on the road, and at the time, Auburn looked unbeatable, to be frank. Everybody was talking about Auburn as this juggernaut that couldn't be taken down, and Florida led by like 19 in the second half or something at some point during that game. And then to go on the road, do the same thing in Tuscaloosa, it's hard to match those caliber wins of going on the road and get big-time wins. So, Brad, we'll throw things to you now here for the top 2 after Rocco took the bottom 2.
Yeah, so of course, Auburn and Duke. I think Auburn is the clear-cut number 1 overall seed. Even if Auburn bows out early in the SEC tournament in their first game, I think it's going to be difficult for them to be overtaken. Auburn right now, if you look at and compare their stats to Duke, who's the second overall number 1 seed, Auburn is 15-4 against quad 1 opponents, while Duke is just 7-3. They have more than double the amount of quad 1 wins. Auburn's 21-4 against quad 1 and 2 teams, while Duke is 14-3. Both have tremendous records, but Auburn is just up and they play in the SEC. I mean, that's what happens. That's what does it for you. And to top it off, Auburn has 8 Q1A wins compared to Duke having 5. Houston and Florida also having 5 as well. So I think there's still, I think the gap has definitely narrowed among these teams. I still think Auburn has the leg up for that number 1 overall seed. And you take a look at the teams that they beat. Auburn's got a ton of tremendous wins, including winning at Alabama. They won at Kentucky. They beat Purdue on a neutral court. They beat Iowa State and Houston on neutral courts. Memphis. So they have a great collection of wins. The thing is, if you want to pinpoint a weakness on Duke's resume, they only have 4 wins over the field as we speak, and that's against Illinois, on a neutral court at Louisville, beat Auburn at home, of course, and won at Arizona. So quality wins. Anyone that's watched Duke play, we know that they are one of the best teams in the country. But that's the one thing that might be missing from their resume playing in the ACC, which right now only has 3 teams in the tournament as compared to playing in the SEC or even the Big 12, just because those teams have so many more opportunities and they have proven themselves.
Yeah, and that's the point I was going to bring to the table, Brad, where it's only 16% of the ACC currently slated to get into the NCAA tournament with 3 out of the 18 teams. And the only people you feel comfortable with as of right now are, we know Duke's a lock, we know Clemson's a lock, we know Louisville's a lock, but then all eyes are currently on the ACC tournament. Yes, North Carolina handled business today, but it feels like they still have a little bit more work to do. And then obviously that's going to bring a massive matchup to the forefront tomorrow in terms of the bubble world between North Carolina and Wake Forest in the battle of those 2 teams in the state of North Carolina. So a lot of storylines to monitor there. Rocco, throwing it back to you before we move on to the 2 seeds. Anything else to add on any of these teams? And I guess we can go for either of you guys. Any additional thoughts on the 1 seeds before we move on?
I would just say on the Auburn-Duke thing, it's really inconsequential, even if somehow Duke got number 1, because Auburn's getting the South either way. Duke's getting the East either way. Now, of course, they align the regions 1, 2, 3, 4, but if you don't go to the Final Four, that doesn't matter anyway. And if you are going to the Final Four, you're going to play a darn good team no matter what. So it really doesn't have any – there's no consequences to losing that battle.
Brad, any further thoughts on the 1 seeds?
Yeah, and just one other point to make, I think Auburn and Duke and most likely Houston are locked into those 1 seeds. I think Florida is still up for grabs for that final 1 seed. And as we get to the 2 line, we'll let you know, who else is in the mix for that final number 1 seed.
All right, well, let's segue and let's go to the 2 line and look at who is still in the mix and who could still play themselves onto that 1 line. Nate Oates' Crimson Tide currently slated to go to the Midwest. Tennessee Volunteers, who have got some impressive wins on their resume as well in the East. January, February, we're into the month of Izzo here with Michigan State, and then Rick Pitino has done such a phenomenal job with St. John's and the Red Storm this year. Brad, we can start with you this time, and I'll let you take your pick of the 2 in relation to the 2 seeds here on Field in the 68.
Sure, so I'll take the top 2, and I believe those are the other 2 teams that still have a chance to get a number 1 seed. Alabama obviously just picked up a huge win to keep their number 1 seed hopes alive at Auburn. You're not going to get a better win than that. So they're still hanging right there for that 1 seed. They have a potential opportunity against Florida in the SEC tournament. That could determine that final number 1 seed. Florida still has the edge for me, and I think for most bracketologists. Part of the reason is the Alabama has 7 losses on the season, whereas Florida just has 4. But if you're looking at overall quality wins, it's very close between these 2 teams. So that next potential matchup between the 2 could loom large. And then Tennessee still hanging around as well, 9-6 against Q1 opponents, 14-6 against Q1 and 2. Number 6 strength of record. Alabama's number 5, so they're right there. And of course, Tennessee is going to still have an opportunity in the SEC tournament. They have a chance to play Auburn in the semifinals. So that's a possibility where maybe that could get them onto the 1 line if they end up beating Auburn. We'd have to see what the other results are, because I still think Florida and Alabama are a notch above Tennessee at the moment, but they are still in play, and I think that's all you could ask for at this point.
Rocco, how are you seeing the 2 seeds, and who is still alive to play themselves onto the 1 line?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Brad that Alabama's still in play because they got that road win at Auburn as well, much like Florida got earlier in the season. But because of those 7 losses, it kind of makes it clear to put them right at the top of the 2. They have an abundance of quality wins, as Brad mentioned. But I think the more interesting one, just because I do believe Florida is a notch above Houston, and Florida won in Tuscaloosa. So even if Alabama beats Florida in the SEC tournament, follow my logic here, but a Florida win in Tuscaloosa is still more impressive than the Alabama win over Florida in Nashville. So I still think the Gators are going to win that battle for me, even if that plays out. and also that game's going to be Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. And we all know the committee is going to have their initial seed list already done, and then they would have to be scrubbed above Florida at that point. And you have to get consensus in the room. So it's a lot to ask. I would imagine maybe a couple people would say, yeah, let's move Alabama ahead of Florida, but you got to get the other 9 or 10 people to agree. So that's why, I think that's one of the misconceptions of the committee process is it's not that they're not paying attention to these conference tournament games. It's just once that initial seed list is built, you got to do something extraordinary that completely dynamically changes the overall body of work. And by the way, 95% of that's in the clubhouse before this week to get the whole committee room to agree to move a team up or down. So that's why most of the times they're not moved. So I don't really I think Florida is going to continue to be above Alabama regardless of results. I could definitely be wrong. I'm just one guy. There's 12 people in there. So that's one fact. But I think the Houston one is really interesting because if Houston could still lose to Colorado tomorrow, and it looks like Colorado is going to pull off this upset over West Virginia, real-time update there. If Houston takes a loss to Colorado, I think it would be really dicey. They'd have to kind of go back under the hood. Then you start to find, guess who lost to Alabama this year? Yep, that's right. Houston lost to Alabama head-to-head. So I think that's the real chance for Alabama is if Houston falls early in the Big 12. My other thought was the battle for the last 2 seed. I'm sure that's going to come up. I'm pretty torn. I had Kentucky there on Monday. And again, my work is just trying to figure out what the committee is going to decide. So I think Kentucky's very much in play. Obviously, St. John's is in play. And there's a big difference between the two. And it just depends what you like better. On the bad side for Kentucky, they already have 9 losses. That's a lot of losses. And when and if they lose this week, they're going to go to the clubhouse with 10 losses. But all their losses are tournament level, or I think they have 1 loss to Texas. So that's one that's below tournament level, but it's still a high quad 1 loss. And then they have just crazy wins. They beat Duke. They swept Tennessee. They have an Alabama win. I mean, when you compare that to St. John's win, it's a no-brainer to take Kentucky. The other thing you like about Kentucky is when they did the committee reveal show on CBS, third week of February, Kentucky came into the clubhouse that day for the real committee at number 10. St. John's was number 16. Now, we know St. John's has been on a tear. They added that road Marquette win. They added some other good wins. But is that enough to pass Kentucky, who also, by the way, has been adding good wins? They had that great win at Missouri to end the season. So I think it could go either way between those two. But I am kind of to a point this week, Faxon, where I think it's down to those two.
Yeah, it's great stuff as always, Rocco. Brad, anything to add on the 2 seeds and also another kind of real-time update with something that Rocco said. While the Texas win may not be tournament level right now, they're not dead yet as they currently lead Vanderbilt by 15. So we'll keep you guys in the loop on what's going on in the SEC tournament because that result could end up shifting up some things on the bubble. Brad, now to you for some closing thoughts here on our 2 seeds.
Yeah, I agree with Rocco. I think when you're comparing teams, you kind of, especially on the lines, the 2, the 3, the 4, you start to look at who have these teams beaten. And if it was up to me, I would have Kentucky ahead of St. John's based on who they've beaten. The Big East, the Big East just is not, it's just not that great. There's a lot of games in that league that are games you're supposed to win. They're not doing anything for your resume. Obviously, St. John's has been hot as any team in the country. They have a number 7 strength of record right now, but they only have 5 quadrant 1 wins. Kentucky has double that. St. John's is 5-4. Kentucky's 10-9. It's very similar records, but they have more opportunities, but they have a lot more wins. They've proven themselves a little bit more. So while I have St. John's as a 2 seed right now, I don't think they have any chance of becoming a number 1 seed. They're much more likely to become a 3, in which case, I don't think they're going to have too much of a problem with that. And in terms of Michigan State, another team that's just been on absolute fire, I think they're pretty solidly on that 2 line. Don't think they can get up to a number 1, and unless they lose early, I don't think it may not even matter. I think Michigan State is a solid 2.
Yeah,
I'm with you, Brad.
Michigan, they seem to have locked in that status. That is who. So We'll see how it plays out in the Big Ten tournament. We'll see how it plays out elsewhere in these conference tournaments where we know a lot of chaos can happen. But it feels like everybody's pretty comfortable calling Michigan State a 2 at this juncture. Let's shift gears now to the 3 line with a lot of interesting names and a lot of teams with upward mobility and I guess some downward mobility on the seed line potentially as well. We'll get into that. Rocco, we can throw things to you first on this one. Kentucky, Texas Tech, Texas A&M, Iowa State, 4 really darn good basketball teams on the 3 line.
Right, yeah, and I think this is exactly what I would have, minus the Kentucky St. John's battle that we already covered. So those other 3 teams that you listed between Iowa State, Texas Tech, and Texas A&M, I'm pretty solid on those being there as 3s as well, at least entering this week. They don't have a ton of separation from the 4s, but they got pretty clear because Wisconsin, who I think we'll talk about in a minute, that home loss to Purdue to Penn State, I was surprised how much damage it did to them, but it did a lot of damage. It knocked Wisconsin to under 500 in quad 1 and, taking a bad loss this late in the year screwed up a lot of their comparisons they were winning before. And Iowa State, handled their business last weekend. So they're coming in and they got a win already today. They got a Cincinnati neutral court win. So they're just Iowa State, these last couple performances, they're just reestablishing themselves. They had some warts the weeks before this, reestablishing themselves as at least as a solid 3 moving forward.
Yeah, in agreement there. Brad, throwing things to you now for your analysis on the 3 line with those 4 teams.
Yeah, and I have those exact 4 teams on the 3 line. I think there's still the possibility for all of those teams, really, to potentially move up to a 2 seed, like we mentioned before. That last 2 seed definitely seems like it's up for grabs based on, how these teams perform in their conference tournaments. I know, like we mention it all the time, you don't see so much movement, but I think that 2 seed is still open enough where if a team really plays strong in their conference tournament, they could nab that final spot. One other thing to mention about, I know Rocco mentioned Wisconsin dropping so far. One thing I think the committee will note, injuries obviously get taken into account. They were missing Max Klesmit for that game against Penn State, as well as a bunch of other games. And I believe he is going to be back for the Big Ten tournament. So I think that has to factor into Wisconsin's seed as well. I don't think you could penalize them. Look, losing it to Penn State at home is not a good loss. I don't care who's injured, who's not injured. You can't lose that game. But I think if Wisconsin gains their mojo back for the Big Ten tournament, they might be given the benefit of the doubt and given a seed, maybe 1 seed higher than you might think they get after a potential bad loss like that.
That's a good point.
Let's transition to the 4 seeds. That's a good point, Brad. And I got to say, looking at our little rundown sheet right here, my feelings are a little bit hurt, guys, from our bracketology committee, but I do understand Wisconsin, Oregon, Maryland, and Purdue as the 4 seeds here on fielding the 68. Brad, we can go to you first on this one. And then selfishly, I'd like to hear how close Clemson is to the 4 line as well, as one of those teams that could play their way up.
Yeah, 4 Big Ten teams on this line is exactly what I have right now. Do I think it's going to turn out that way? Probably not. The chances of that happening are not great because some of these teams are going to make a move, at least make a deep runs in their conference tournaments. As far as Clemson, they're my top number 5 seed. They're really close, and it just comes down to the league they play in. They play in the ACC. They only have 4 quadrant 1 wins compared to Maryland has 7, Oregon has 8, Wisconsin has 6, Purdue has 7, and they all have a ton more. They all have a lot more quadrant 1 plus quadrant 2 victories as well. And again, a lot of that comes to opportunities, and the Big Ten just provides a lot more opportunities than the ACC does. And when you look at a team like Clemson and you look at who their best wins have been against, they beat Duke. It's a great win. They beat Kentucky. Very good win. Now, the only thing that those 2 wins have in common, they both came at home. So you try to figure out who's Clemson's best win away from home, and it's not easy to do that. At SMU, Penn State on a neutral court, at Pittsburgh. That's one thing that's kind of missing from Clemson's resume. I think they're a really good basketball team. They also have 1 quadrant 3 loss, compared to all those 4 Big Ten teams on the 4 line that do not have any bad losses. So we're nitpicking here, but that's what the committee is going to do, and that's the reason why Clemson isn't quite on that 4 line. But just looking at those other 4 seeds, I think they're all very close. I think Oregon did their work in non-conference play. It's almost been like a tale of 3 seasons for Oregon. Started off strong in that Vegas tournament, and they picked up wins against Texas A&M and Alabama and San Diego State. And then they hit a significant lull in Big Ten play. They were under 500 for a while, but then finished strong by getting wins at Ohio State, at Wisconsin. So I feel pretty good about where they're at right now because remember, it's total body of work. It's not how you finish the season. It's not how you started the season. It's what you've done throughout the course of the season. And as we head into conference tournaments, each one of these conference tournament games, the committee says it all the time, they count as another game. It doesn't count as double. It doesn't count as, it's not meaningless, but it counts as another game on your resume. So all these teams that play in these high major, these power conference leagues still have opportunities to improve their overall resume.
Rocco, what do you have to add on our 4 seeds?
Yeah, so I disagree with Purdue, and I moved Purdue to a 5. It's a little bit tough to do because we know the real committee had Purdue as a 2 seed. So if they fall to a 5 seed, that's a pretty far drop from that day. They haven't been awful or anything since that day, but they've taken some losses. Of course, a loss there at the end of the regular season against Illinois. And you start doing a side-by-side. So I do have Arizona still as a 4 at the right there at the 16-17 break, which is the end of the 4s, start of the 5s. And you look at them side by side, it's a close comparison. Purdue has 1 additional win against the field, but Arizona's got 3 total wins away from home against the field, whereas Purdue only has 2. Purdue also has losing records away from Mackey overall, and quad 1, quad 2 true road games. Purdue's 5 and 6, Arizona 6 and 5. I know that's one thing in particular the committee cares about. So Arizona's, just by win percentage in some of these areas, although they do have a worse win percentage in Q1, they had more opportunities. They both have 7 Q1 wins. Arizona's got 1 extra in the top half of quad 1. So again, I don't want to get in the weeds and bore people, but there are some things and some reasons to pull Purdue out of protected seed status. So whether you take Arizona, that's an opportunity, Faxon, to get to your question. You could also put a Clemson above them now if you wanted to. I think the only problem with Clemson that I have, and this came up during a bunch of meetings last weekend, was they just don't have that top of the resume credential that you're looking for typically with a protected seed. Clemson just has the 2 wins against tournament level teams, which obviously are big ones, led by Duke. So that is a premier win, but typically your premier win needs to be away from your home court. So Clemson just doesn't have it. And I know with beating San Francisco, Penn State early on looked great. They're still good wins, but they're not going to be tournament teams, I don't think. Sorry to my Dons, but it's probably not happening. And, and everything else is great about Clemson. They have a great road record, above 500 record in all the quads. The one knock, I guess, is the home Georgia Tech loss. But it's just tough because they're compared to all these teams who do have road top of the resume wins to talk about and look at. So Clemson just looks like, what I call empty calories.
Yeah, a byproduct of playing in the worst version of the ACC arguably ever. Just haven't had the ample opportunity to notch a lot of those quadrant 1 wins that teams in other leagues have. All right, we're going to take a quick break here on the show. These breaks, as always, brought to you by our friends at Rhythm. Guys, we're getting right towards March Madness season. If you're a season bettor and you're aiming to dominate your college basketball betting, March Madness pool, even if you do NBA, golf, and more, Rhythm gives you the competitive edge. You can combine Rhythm's analytics with Field of 68's expert insights for the ultimate college hoops experience. Don't wait. Download Rhythm today and transform how you bet, bracket, and enjoy college basketball. We will be visiting with Rocco and Brad on the other side of a quick break to talk bubble. We're going to do last 4 in, first 4 out, and next 4 out. Stick with us here on Fielding the 68.
College basketball fans, are you ready to take your hoops game to a new level? Whether you're a seasoned bettor or just trying to win your March Madness office pool, Rhythm is here to give you the edge. this season. With data-driven predictions for every single college basketball game left on the schedule, Rhythm helps you maximize your bets. And as March Madness kicks off, Rhythm's insights will help you spot those plucky Cinderellas that you know are going to shake up the NCAA tournament. But that's not all. When Selection Sunday rolls around, let Rhythm's AI-powered bracket generator do the heavy lifting for you. This is the same AI tool that performed 35% better than the average ESPN bracket last year. And here's the best part. Rhythm pairs perfectly with our Field of 68 expert analysis, giving you the 1-2 punch that you need for the rest of the college basketball season. So don't wait. Download Rhythm today and get ready to see college basketball and your betting results in a whole new light. I want my home to feel like my home. So whether I'm looking for big furniture, just a small piece for my place, or maybe some storage solutions for the basement or the garage, the answer is Wayfair. Seriously, I needed a new patio set and fire pit for my backyard. I bought it on Wayfair. It looks great on our deck, and it gives me an excuse to fire up the smoker, invite some friends over, crack a couple beers. Just last week, I bought a new chair for my office, someplace comfortable to sit while the madness takes up the 4 screens in front of me. I got it on Wayfair, clicked a few buttons. A couple days later, it showed up at my front door. They even offered to help set it up for you. Digging through online stores can be intimidating. Trust me, I know. It can be hard to find what you're looking for in your price range, but not on Wayfair. They have great options, even if you are balling on a budget like me. Wayfair has every style for every home, including mine and yours. So head to wayfair.com and shop everything home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home.
We welcome you back in, everybody, to Fielding the 68, brought to you by Rhythm. I'm Faxon Childress alongside Brad Wachtel and Rocco Miller. We're going to jump right back into things, talking college hoops. And in this segment, we will be doing the bubble after we did our full reveal of our top 16 seeds, did some in-depth team breakdowns and some team breakdowns from teams even outside of the top 16 about who could potentially get themselves into that region. Now, we'll start with you, Brad, here for last 4 in. Obviously, the bubble is crowded. A lot of these teams still have games to play. There's some of these teams that might even be playing right now. I haven't seen your last 4 in. But walk us through how you are seeing the bubble picture as of right now of who's in the dance.
Sure. So my last 4 in, still Indiana, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Xavier. I don't think any of these teams are locks, certainly not locks right now. They all have some opportunities. Indiana gets to play Oregon in their first game in the Big Ten tournament. I think if they win that game, they should be in the field, barring an absurd number of bid stealers. I think we have to say that again because of what happened last year. There was 5 bid stealers. Chances are we may only see 1 or 2, like a normal year, but you never know. So we have to be careful when we use that term lock. Next up, Oklahoma. So Oklahoma plays Georgia tonight in the SEC tournament. I think they can still get in with a loss, but to really feel good about being in the field, if they can beat Georgia, it'll put them in a much better spot. Again, I would not call them a lock, but I'd feel a lot more confident with one more win. And then you get to Ohio State, and this is a must-win against Iowa. Game is about to tip in about 40 minutes or so. Ohio State's just 17-14 overall. A loss to Iowa would put them at 17-15, and you just don't see teams get NCAA tournament bids by just being 2 games over 500 overall. So that would be a death sentence to them. I mean, they're just 9-14 against quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 opponents combined, which is when you start comparing that number to every other team that has an at-large bid right now, they are the worst. And they also have the worst strength of record, which is 51. So they cannot afford to lose this game. They need to beat Iowa, and they very well might need to win their next game after that against Illinois. But first things first, take care of business against Iowa, and then we could talk again tomorrow. And then finally, Xavier. Xavier actually picked up a second quadrant 1 win when UConn moved into the top 30 of the net. So while it doesn't mean a whole lot, being 2-8 looks a little bit better than being 1-8. And they have a significant opportunity against Marquette in the Big East tournament. A game I would still advise them to win. They have a 40th strength of record overall, 46 WAP. And I think if they can beat Marquette, just like a lot of these other bubble teams, that's what they need. They need that another win away from home. They won at Marquette already. They can get another one like that at Madison Square Garden. I think that would be significant for them. A loss to Marquette, and then you got to see how the rest of the bubble performs. And I wouldn't want to be in that position.
Yeah, definitely don't want to be in the position where you lose, you don't control your own destiny, and you're sitting watching the television at home, rooting for other teams on the bubble to lose as well. That sounds like a nightmare, to be candid. Rocco, let's throw things to you now. How do you see the last four in picture as it currently stands?
Well, hey, you said the word currently, and I know it's not going to show up on the graphic, but I think West Virginia is in this mix for sure. Now, the good thing about West Virginia is they've got a road win at the Fog. That's huge, especially at this part of the bubble. Now their win over Gonzaga. Gonzaga is now the WCC champions, automatic bid, top 10 in net. That's huge. That helps them a lot. They also have Arizona from the Battle for Atlantis tournament and a home Iowa State win. But that loss to Colorado that just happened a few minutes ago knocks their overall meaningful record that I call when you just remove quad 4 results and look at their record. West Virginia is now 12-13. So they're very similar to what Seton Hall was last year, Dagan. I know you're listening. And they're a team you could pretty much easily move out of the field if you need a team to be moved out. And for you to be that close to being moved out, I think West Virginia is either going to land in Dayton at this point or be a bunch of angry Mountaineers on Sunday night. So keep that in mind. That's a cliffhanger. Otherwise, we got to go back to Baylor, the other cliffhanger in the Big 12. Again, their effective record is 12-12. So if they lose, they're playing Kansas State next, or at in an hour and a half. If they lose that, they're in the same boat as West Virginia. And I think they're in even worse shape because they don't have a road win at Kansas. They have a home win over Kansas, but they only have neutral court wins. And that's St. John's and Arkansas are great. The St. John's game, obviously controversial. They don't have that road win against the field, so I think it's a lot easier to take Baylor all the way out than West Virginia. So if I'm a West Virginia fan, I'm rooting for Baylor to lose, even though they're in my league, just for the at-large sake of things. So that's very fascinating stuff. Then you have Xavier, well covered by Brad. I won't double down on Xavier. I agree with everything he said. Get a second Marquette win. They're in about as good a shape as they could be, but they also still have a lot of warts. Their road record and away from Cintas Center record is not going to be above 500 unless they make the Big East championship game. So Xavier is still a team you could remove from the field with enough bid steals. So just keep winning if you're Xavier and hope for the best. And then I think Oklahoma, again, a team you could pull out if you need to. They don't have their strong road win is at Arkansas, which is nice. And Arkansas is probably solidly in at this point after their win this morning. I just thought they had to avoid that disaster to South Carolina. They got through it. So Oklahoma does have a road win against the field, but they were 2-7 on the road. It's a really bad road record. Their meaningful record is right around 500. That's not great. Add a loss today, even more things to pick apart, right? So I think Oklahoma's kind of hanging on. And Georgia's playing really, really well. So we'll see if they can get it done. And then UC Irvine, probably my favorite resume of all of them by far because they've won 17 times away from home. They only played 9 home games, and it's just an incredible resume. They in terms of how often they won, obviously they don't play the level of competition as these other teams, but they do have that big quad 1A road win at UC San Diego. Back that up by winning at places like Northern Iowa, Belmont, and Cal State Northridge, which are all top 2 quad victories. Just dominant records on the road for these anteaters. And I think if you're at a point where there's no bid stealers like so far there aren't, they're a team worthy of including.
Yeah, I love the mid-major love, and obviously that Irvine team has been electric all year. And also on the West Virginia front, some interesting nuggets there as the Country Road's going to hope to not be at home and be in the big dance. So we'll see if they can hold on to their tournament status. Let's take a look at the consensus last 4 in now before we shift gears to who's on the wrong side of the cut line. Indiana, Oklahoma, Xavier, and Ohio State is the consensus here for the last 4 in. And we got to keep this thing pushing. So we're going to go right to the next 4 out here. And we're going to start with you, Rocco, for this one. So we've talked about a ton of teams, a litany of teams, if you will, over the course of the show already. But who is currently on the wrong side of the cut line for you?
Well, everybody else that we haven't talked about that is in the bubble mix. So I'll start with North Carolina because I think they're getting really interesting. They don't have the wins, and the quad one record's still really, really bad, 1-11. But I know we have some basketball people on the committee, and it's pretty clear the last few weeks North Carolina's playing. They're playing much better. There's no such thing as looks like an NCAA tournament. It's a stupid cliche to say. But they're playing. You can run the numbers like I do all the time, 3 weeks at a time. North Carolina's a top 15 in the country performance-wise, but they're not playing the opponents that proves it. So you can't put them in the field based on stuff like that. And we know who the committee chairman is, so it's not lost on me by any means. So I think North Carolina is just going to be completely dissected. And now they get a Wake Forest opportunity. So if they go out and pound Wake Forest tomorrow, that's going to be, Wake Forest's net, unfortunately, for North Carolina is still in the 70s, I believe. It's definitely not in the quad one. You got to be a top 50 neutral to be a quad one. So that'll be a quad 2 win, but Wake's a fellow bubble team. And if they make it very clear, I think a blowout win over Wake and then a close game again with Duke, it's just how do we leave this team out? So that's like a human element thing. There's nothing going to be on their resume that wows you at this point, unless they beat Duke in the game possibly 2 days from now. So anyway, enough about UNC. I just think they're interesting. I think with Dayton's road win at VCU, Dayton's also got those early season wins with UConn, Marquette, some really big mix of results for the Flyers. And I do think the Flyers need to just keep winning this week to really have a chance to get in. But out of all the bubble teams, they do have the wins above the field, above the cut line, and most of these teams with that. Same with Boise State. The problem with Boise State is most of those wins happen in the state of Idaho, and they were all pro Boise State arenas. And I like their team overall. It's definitely not a knock on them, but this is how the committee sees it. They wanted you to go and get big road wins above the cut line. And they didn't really prove that. Now, they do have the win over Clemson at home. They have the St. Mary's win in Idaho Falls. But I think that loss to Colorado State at home just really kind of set them back, added another tough one. And then Colorado State, I love the way they're playing. I think they have a really good chance to win the Mountain West tournament. In fact, they would be my pick to win it right now. But resume-wise, a couple of those losses, UC Riverside, Washington, et cetera, and their records in the quads, just not enough juice there for me to put them in. But still, we got to keep our eye on them because I think they have a really good chance to win this Mountain West tournament.
Yeah, Nico Medved's got the Rams playing their best ball of the season right now down the stretch, and definitely a dark horse to potentially go win the whole thing out in the Mountain West tournament. We know how crazy conference tournaments can get. Brad, we'll throw things to you now. How are you seeing the first 4 out as of right now? Obviously, a lot subject to change.
Yeah, some of these teams we've already talked about, like Boise State. I think Boise State, they're my first team out. I think they still have an opportunity to get back in based on who they get to play in the Mountain West Conference tournament. They get to play San Diego State. If they beat them, they'll have an opportunity, potentially to play New Mexico. I think getting 2 wins in that conference tournament, I think puts them in pretty good position to receive an at-large bid. You got to remember, Boise State has wins over, they beat St. Mary's on a neutral court, they beat Clemson, they beat New Mexico already, they beat Utah State. So the committee definitely likes to see wins, not only conference wins, but wins outside of your conference and away from home, away from their home court at least. They do have a quadrant 4 loss right now, which is a problem, and their strength of record is, right now they're in the upper 50s in terms of their resume metrics, which isn't great, but things will change if they can pick up 2 more wins in the conference tournament. I talked about Nebraska. There's nothing that they can do, even though they're in my first 4 out. There's nothing they can do to improve their resume because they're not in the Big Ten tournament. I have them there based on the fact that they have 2 really good road wins at Oregon and at Creighton. I think that's a big separator among a lot of these teams that are out. Texas is the next team. Texas is alive. Texas is currently beating I don't know if we have an update yet on that score, but Texas is currently beating Vanderbilt by double digits with 6 minutes to go. So I think that's a game that they definitely need. I don't think that necessarily puts Texas in the field. I think they likely need another win. They'll get a shot at Texas A&M. If they can beat Texas A&M, they're close. They're very close. And then I think it's going to depend on how a ton of other bubble teams, how they perform over the next couple days. So Texas still has a chance. But right now, even with this win, they will still be out of the field for me. And then finally, UC Irvine, which Rocco touched, really well on, 17-3 away from home. You're not going to see that in any other NCAA tournament team. I wouldn't knock the committee if they put in UC Irvine if they lose to UC San Diego in the championship game. Not at all. It'd be great to see. But they don't have any opportunities left, and some of these other teams do. So they're going to have to see how that plays out, and we're going to have to see if there are any bid stealers to open the door for them.
Yeah, I think those are great points, on all. And then Texas just – they control their own destiny, man. It's right there in front of them. You got to go win games, and you got to go win games in March. So this is really just an extension of the NCAA tournament for them. You got to go out there and win. It's do or die. It's put up or shut up time. So they're currently handling business against the Commodores. I think I saw up 14 now with 6 minutes left, something along those lines. So if they could put it to bed and handle the Aggies tomorrow, they might be in. All right, let's take a look now at our consensus first four out, and then we'll do next four out and take a quick break. We got those anteaters that Rocco was talking about: Boise State, North Carolina, and then Colorado State. Obviously, North Carolina did notch win number 21 today as well, just a couple minutes before the show kicked off here on Fielding the 68. Anything else to add, guys, on these teams before we look at next four out and then take a quick break?
Yeah, so first of all, with North Carolina, they're 1-11 against quadrant one opponents. They've had the opportunities. And if you're a team like UC Irvine, it's funny because Rocco, you're campaigning for UC Irvine and North Carolina. Those two teams could be campaigning against each other. And if you're a team like UC Irvine, who is 1-0 against quadrant one opponents, Carolina's 1-11, you're like, are you kidding me? Like, how many opportunities do you need? Now, in terms of North Carolina did not get Clemson and Louisville at home. They had to go on the road for both of those games, which hurts them as well. But ultimately, look, you gotta beat some teams. And even if they beat Wake Forest tomorrow, yes, I agree with Rocco 100% that they'll be right in the mix for a bid. I just have a little bit of a problem with that based on the fact that they still only have one win against the NCAA tournament field, and that's against UCLA on a neutral court. So, you've had a ton of opportunities. You've got your 8-0 quad 2, which is great. 6-1 quad 3. That record against Q1 through 3 is a really good record for a bubble team, and their resume metrics are right there. But ultimately, who have you beaten? And when your only win is against, one win against the field, I have a hard time putting a team like that in the field.
No doubt. And I 100% agree with everything you said. And I'm not campaigning for North Carolina. So I just want to be very clear about that. My work is centered on what I think the committee is going to end up doing in the end. And I just think North Carolina is not going away from the conversation. So we might as well just address it head on here on this fine Wednesday. And it is what it is. Like, honest to God, and I'll be to our audience, if it's the exact same resume with the exact same final scores, all the same everything, but their name was Davidson and not North Carolina, there's no chance I would be putting them in my first four out. This is North Carolina. It's an ACC without them only getting 3 bids. So I'm just being realistic about what we're up against here. That's all I'll say about it. But
no question.
Yeah,
I think campaigning might have been the wrong word to use with that.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. I think they're going to stick around until Sunday, and it's going to annoy us who do the work on it, and it is what it is. It's the world we live in.
For sure. And Brad, you can join the club. I did say opinion related to Rocco the other day as well. So we both misspoke on his behalf in the last couple of shows. We got to get better collectively as a group here, is what I found out through that. Let's take a quick look at some next four out before we break. Obviously, these are going to be the teams that have got work to do. You've got the Flyers, who I think have a legitimate chance to win their conference tournament, so I'm not writing that team off yet. We saw the flashes in the non-con. It's been up and down in conference play. Wake Forest, Steve Forbes' group has got some work to do after waning down the stretch in ACC play. We mentioned Texas, who looks like they're about to clinch a big win over Vanderbilt and keep themselves alive. And then Nebraska ball, another team that has really waned down the stretch. Fellas, open to the floor here for our next 4 out before we take a quick break. What are our thoughts on these teams?
Yeah, for me, the Texas thing, I haven't talked about them yet. I do think they're 3 wins at least away. So today's 1. Give me 2 more, and we'll get serious again. But they came into the week 4 games under 500 in the meaningful area. So, and if they're gonna be in that large team, they have to lose this week. Now, if Texas goes and wins the whole thing, great, they're in. But otherwise, you're back in the at-large pool with another loss. So, you got to at least go 3-1 this week. And even so, you're still 2 under 500 at the end. So, yeah, they might need 4 wins. Again, they might be able to – I have to look at the bracket. They might be able to beat a 1 seed or something. And that's kind of what you need, right? Like last year, Seton Hall. I keep going back to that because they were 11-12 at this stage, but they had a UConn win. And UConn was clearly the best team in the country. So you put Seton Hall in that situation because they got something crazy and amazing at the top. Right now, Texas has nothing near that. So to me, it's not that hard. And same thing with Ohio State, for the record. I'm the one with Ohio State pretty far out. They need a couple wins for the same reason. They're actually 1 win closer than Texas. So I do think if Ohio State can beat Iowa today, Illinois tomorrow, then it gets interesting for them. But Ohio State was more interesting earlier in the process when Purdue was like a 2 seed. Now Purdue's like a 4 or a 5, depending on where you go there. So it's not as like platinum gold. It's some gold. It's good, but it's not platinum gold. It's not super elite. And if you're gonna have a losing record, you need to have super elite wins.
Brad, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Just to look back at those teams you threw up there, I think we can also touch base on Wake Forest. And I don't think Wake Forest's resume is a whole lot worse than North Carolina. They do have that second quadrant 3 loss, but they also have 1 win over the field. They also beat North Carolina on their home court. Their neutral site win was against Michigan. North Carolina was against UCLA. Those are 5 seeds, 4, 5, or 6 seeds. They're very, very similar seed lines. So I think if we're going to talk about North Carolina, then you have to mention that Wake Forest is still alive. Wake Forest has a better strength of record actually right now than Wake Forest, although their net is 68. Their predictive metrics are not strong at all, but we know that those do not play a role in it for inclusion into the NCAA tournament. So look, if Wake Forest can beat North Carolina, and then if they can, I still think they'll need to beat Duke. They could put them right there. So I don't think we should totally discount Wake Forest, and we're not because they're in our next 4 out. But I do think they're still alive. But they gotta get to work.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, Faxon, real quick.
Go
I was
ahead,
going to
Rocco.
mention on that last point that Brad made. The interesting thing about the North Carolina-Wake Forest matchup is if Carolina beats Wake, it's just another quad 2 win for Carolina. It doesn't help that quad 1 record. But if Wake beats Carolina, it's a quad 1 win for Wake. Funny how that works out.
That is a good point. I hadn't thought about it that way. That is a good point. So definitely a lot more to play for in that sense for Wake Forest than North Carolina. So that's something to monitor headed into tomorrow. But once again, hard to feel bad for UNC. You've got 12 opportunities to beat quad 1 teams. I know a lot of which are the 1 seeds, but to Rocco's point with the Anteaters, they're 1-0 in those same spots. They got the same amount of wins with North Carolina with 11 less tries. So depends on how you view it, man. Depends on how you view it. Let's take a quick break here on the program. Brought to you by Rhythm. As always, you can access expert-backed predictions for every remaining college basketball game, from rivalries to sleeper matchups. You can identify mid-majors and underdogs that can upset the field and shake up your bracket. Don't wait. Download Rhythm today and transform how you bet, bracket, and enjoy college basketball. The final segment of Fielding the 68 here on a Wednesday is on the other side of a short break.
If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM for the season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Go download the BetMGM app and use the code FIELD today. Now is your chance to prove you're smarter than the field of 68. We're hosting a Survivor contest with our partner Splash Sports. There's a $25 entry fee, a 25 entry max in the contest, and more than 1,700 spots available, which means there's a $40,000 max prize for the winner. Survivor is the future of March Madness. Each day you pick a team to win. If they win, you advance. We'll also be running a free to enter bracket contest as well as a second chance Survivor in the Sweet 16. So prove you know more ball than the field of 68 on Splash Sports. As teams are fighting to get off the bubble and into the field of 68, I got a beverage for you that's been off the bubble since day one. Dad Water. No bubbles, no fizz, just a smooth, refreshing canned cocktail unlike anything else on the market today. If you're tired of the same old beers and seltzers on game day, crack open something different. Dad Water is made with tequila, water, and natural flavors. Nothing artificial, no BS. It's 100 calories, zero sugar, zero carbs, gluten-free, so if you're on a diet like me, you're good to go. Dad Water is also an Indiana brand. College Hoops is in its DNA, and they want you to enjoy a great lineup of products all tournament long. Dad Water is the ultimate game time drink with no bubbles. It just drinks like water. Clean, smooth, refreshing, and without those burps. So take it from me, this is the easiest drinking adult beverage I've ever had. Dad Water is now available at Target, Total Wine and Liquor, and Meijer, as well as your favorite local liquor stores. Or you can order online at drinkdadwater.com. Dad Water, tequila, water, natural flavor.
Final segment of Fielding the 68 here on a Wednesday. I'm Faxon Childress alongside Rocco Miller and Brad Wachtel. It's been a fun program today. We've gone through our top 16 overall seeds. We went through every team that you could imagine that's still alive on the bubble for the NCAA tournament. And we got the best in the business with Rocco and Brad here to break down how they are viewing the world of bracketology. As we're right around the corner, man. Life is good. It's the best month of the year. It's everybody's favorite month here with college hoops and March Madness. So let's get to this final segment with some team breakdowns and some deep dives. Rocco, I'm going to defer to you here first because this hits home for you. Let's talk a little Gonzaga and St. Mary's. Number one, what a tournament. I don't want to discount what Pepperdine was able to accomplish, winning 3 straight games. Mo Odom is definitely going to be super coveted in the transfer portal. Now, that young man made himself some money throughout the course of the West Coast Conference tournament. But how was that experience for you, my guy? And talk to us a little bit about the Zags and the Gales.
Yeah, I mean, Pepperdine was definitely the story of the tournament. Definitely unexpected. They pulled 3 straight upsets. I didn't even expect them to beat Portland. Then they beat the Beavers in Santa Clara, like, shockingly. So, we didn't get a great game. Of course, St. Mary's just head and shoulders better than Pepperdine in every possible way. But they made it interesting for, like, 10 minutes, and then it got ugly. But, the championship game last night is like watching the Rocky movie every year. It's the 4th straight year they played each other for the title. Gonzaga's been in the WCC championship game for 28 straight years, and they've won 21 of the last 27. So, I mean, it is what it is. I think it's good for the West Coast because they've become the 2 biggest – that's the biggest rivalry in the whole West Coast now. Like, I think that's legit. UCLA and Arizona want to be rivals, but I think this one's got more beef because the country's used to watching that game now. That Tuesday night of championship week, you're like, all right, Gonzaga St. Mary's, here we go again. And it's not just a West Coast thing, it's a national thing. So I think that's big for the league. As far as the seed, this is what we talked about all last night. I think Gonzaga is all that 8-9 talk we've been doing. I think those days are over. I think they're a clean 7 at the worst. They ended up at the very top of my 7. I was comparing them to the BYUs, the Louisvilles, the Kansases of the world. And I had a hard time, BYU's my last 6, so I had a hard time just putting them over BYU just due to the fact that BYU's won at Iowa State, at Arizona, at West Virginia. It's close because Gonzaga now, they have 4 wins over the field. Obviously, their power stuff is all top 10 worthy, Nets number 8 and all that. So you have to kind of try to balance it somehow. they'll be one of those teams where if the committee really wanted to, they can push them all the way to 5. I just think the difference between this year and last year they got that win at Kentucky. They don't have that this year. Not even close. They have it at San Diego State, which is great, but it's not Kentucky. It's a difference of a 10 seed or I think Kentucky was a 3 seed last year. So they don't have that this year. They also won at St. Mary's last year. So they had 2 big road wins at the top of the top half of the bracket. And this year they're coming in with a resume at San Diego State being the only real road win to look at above the cut line. And then they've got the neutral court Indiana, neutral court St. Mary's wins. Still good, still strong, still dangerous. They'll probably land as a 6 by Sunday just because a lot of these teams they're right next to are going to be playing and most of them are going to lose. So I feel good that they'll land a 6, but they're a 7 for now. And then on the St. Mary's end, they dropped about 3 spots for me. They were 19 on Monday. Now they're 22. So they're right in the middle of the 6s. I think that's where they're going to end up.
Brad, you got anything to add on the West Coast Conference Championship game, what that might have potentially changed for you, and whether it helped or hurt anybody else?
Yeah, I'm with Rocco for the most part. Gonzaga is actually my final number 6 seed. I think they are right there on that 6 or 7 line. And the question becomes, how do you balance? They don't have the top end victories like they've had in the past, but their metrics, their net, their BPI, their KenPom, their Torvik rank are all top 10. So it's just a matter of balancing what they've done by what they are projected to do. And you don't want to give them a seed too poor. And I feel like Rocco said, I think ultimately they'll probably become a 6 seed on Selection Sunday, but it's gonna have to play out by how all these other teams do in their conference tournaments. And St. Mary's was a 5 seed for me, dropped about 3 spots, and they're now a 6 seed along with Gonzaga. So I think there's a decent chance they both end up on the same seed line.
Yep.
If Gonzaga were to be a 6, hypothetically speaking, is there a chance they would be favored in Vegas en route to the Elite 8 by that hypothetical? Because they would definitely be favored over the 11. I think a couple of the 3s they would certainly be favored over, and then they would potentially be favored over a couple of the 2s as well. Is that correct?
Yes, they'd be favored right now. If you take a look at the 3s, they'd be favored over Texas A&M. I think between them and Kentucky, it could be close to almost close to a pick'em. And yeah, and then we'll see who else is potentially in play. But in terms of the 2 seeds, they played St. John's. They could be the favorite. That's probably it. I think Michigan State would probably lean Michigan State slightly. But look, that's a team that nobody's going to want to play. I mean, that's pretty obvious. If you see Gonzaga in your side of the region, if you're the 3 seed or if you're the 2 seed, you're pretty upset.
Yeah. Rocco, anything else to add about the Zags? And obviously, we all know Mark Few and making the Sweet 16. It's like rolling out of bed in the morning when it comes to March.
Yeah, I'd just say they're playing their best basketball of the year. I think anybody that's watched the last 2 weeks, it's quite clear.
Yeah.
I think I fixed a lot of those early season issues. I think on their team sheet, if you look at it real closely, you can see they've lost 3 games in overtime. Their games decided by, I think it's 6 points or less. They're 0-6. And all the games they won. Now, these last 2 that they won here, technically San Francisco was by 9 and last night was by 7. But before this tournament, they had only won 2 games by single digits all year. All their other wins are blowouts. So that shows you why the net loves them. Because the blowout, like it or not, the net loves blowouts. And Gonzaga went to 2 quad 1 road games to finish the year in the Bay Area, Santa Clara, San Francisco, and blew them both out. So again, they're playing their best ball and they're very dangerous. And even when they've played like the top of the sport, nobody's been able to blow this team out or dominate them. So that's why you're seeing what you saying favorites, underdogs. That's why they're going to be favorites against most teams.
Yeah, definitely playing their best ball of the season right now, and it felt like they were just throwing it into Ike every single possession against San Francisco,
They
and he
did
was
for
just
a
going to
while.
the
They did.
well every single time. They were just pounding the ball inside, man. It's a fun thing to watch when the Zags get rolling. All right, before we go to games to watch, I do want to get both of you guys to give a brief comment on what happened today in the SEC tournament and a team that's obviously been tantalizing from start to finish this year. I am not going to use this platform to rip Coach Cal for maybe a questionable decision related to making or missing a free throw. However, his team won regardless. Talk to me a little bit about Arkansas, and we can start with you here, Brad. We'll go to Rocco first for games and around the horn.
I think Arkansas is now safely in the field. I think even if we see multiple bid stealers, I think Arkansas should be an NCAA tournament team. If you take a look at what Arkansas has done this season, I know they got off to a rough start in SEC play, but they did win at Vanderbilt. They beat Missouri. They won at Texas. They won at Kentucky, of course. Nice non-conference win against Michigan on a neutral court. So I do believe Arkansas will see its name called on Selection Sunday. And actually, with Vanderbilt's loss today, I mean, Vanderbilt's a team that many of us thought was pretty much locked in as of, a week or so ago. But Vanderbilt's now lost a few games in a row, whereas Arkansas has picked up some wins. And you can make the argument that Arkansas's resume is almost as good as Vanderbilt's right now. And to top it off, they're still playing. So they still have more time to improve on it. But yeah, I think Arkansas is safely in the field, and not losing to South Carolina twice in the span of 10, 11 days, whatever it might be, is definitely something that is very important heading into Selection Sunday.
Yeah, they needed that one today. They went 10 minutes without making a shot in the second half and still held on to win it, and I think ended up pushing that 4, which was the number. Rocco, anything to add on the Razorbacks before we keep it with you for games to watch?
Yeah, I think Brad nailed it pretty well. I don't see many scenarios where you could leave them out at this point. They have the win at Kentucky. That carries the day on the bubble. And they back that up with wins at Vandy. And at Texas doesn't hurt. Obviously, still in Quad 1. So, and some nice, the neutral court win over Michigan. So the biggest problem for them was that record thing. And now with that extra win in Quad 2 against South Carolina, their top 2 quad record is – still not great. It's 9-12, but they have 4 in Quad 3 to get them to 13-12. So even a loss tomorrow, they're 13-13, and they're going to the clubhouse with that win over Kentucky at the top of the profile. They should be good.
Yeah, should be good. It should be interesting to see how they pan out in the tournament. We know it's a talented bunch. Rocco, we'll keep it with you. Games to watch before we get out of here.
Yeah, so I'm riding this Baylor thing pretty hard because I really feel like they're going to be totally examined in the room, the actual committee room. And if they lose this game to Kansas State, the tournament's in Kansas City. So Kansas State's going to feel nice and at home, nothing to lose for them. Obviously a talented team when they play well. Baylor's record's going to be knocked out of whack if they take a loss. We've talked about that to death. So that's certainly a game to watch. If you like watching bubble teams that are struggling, that one's for you. Otherwise, I would say the Patriot League title game. We got American and Navy. I would say between Austin Benini on Navy, sharpshooting junior, and Matt Rogers, the player of the year at American, you get the 2 best players in the league going for the title. That should be a knockdown, drag them out fight. Brad mentioned before the show, Navy beat them twice this year. Should be an awesome game. That's the only bid going out today officially. And then I would just say that Oklahoma-Georgia game back to the bubble. An Oklahoma loss makes it very doable to just rip them out of the field once bids get stolen. I think they would still be one of those last 1 or 2 placeholder teams at the bottom of the field. But an Oklahoma loss today, they're going to be very vulnerable for that repeal, as I call it.
Brad, what are some games you've got your eyeballs on as we trend towards the conference tournament conclusions?
Yeah, there's a couple. First of all, I will say in the Mountain West, and I know I talked about Boise State before. One team that they've beaten twice this year, Nevada. So Nevada is about to beat Fresno State, or they're beating Fresno State right now. Should they win, they end up playing Colorado State. If Nevada can beat Colorado State, and if Boise State can, win some games themselves, Nevada currently is 78 in the net. If Nevada can get in the top 75 of the net, that would be one more Quadrant 1 win for Boise State. and that would be one more quadrant 2 win as well. So that changes the complexion of their resume a little bit, and could have them potentially finish over 500 against quadrant 1 and 2 opponents, which I think is fairly significant. So that's one thing to pay attention to. And then, of course, the other game that's today, that is just getting underway shortly, is Ohio State and Iowa. We talked about it earlier. This is a must-win for Ohio State. They likely need 2 wins to really feel good about getting a bid in the NCAA tournament. But they got to win this game because they're not going to get in if they lose to Iowa today.
Great stuff as always. All right, we're going to sign off here on Fielding the 68. I'm Faxon Childress for Rocco Miller and Brad Wachtel as well. Appreciate everybody that tuned in throughout the course of the program today. Obviously, we're going to have jam-packed content for you guys throughout the entire month of March, so make sure you're following along on all the social media and tuning into the shows. Have a good time